Hello, my name is Santiago Martinez, and today we're going to be evaluating problem 3 of Unit 4 exam. And this is a 4-part problem of using our unit circle and our knowledge of trig functions to solve for our values. So our first one is going to be cosine of 4 pi over 3 is equal to what? So how do we solve these kind of problems? So immediately we know that cosine is equal to x on our unit circle. So we find 4 pi over 3 on our unit circle. You should have it memorized. But 4 pi over 3 is right here. These values are actually swapped on my unit circle, so that's incorrect. But we're looking for cosine, so it should be negative 1/2. So cosine is equal to negative 1/2 at 4 pi over 3. So again, this is going to equal negative 1/2. I'm going to make a note right here that these values are flopped. My apologies. That way we don't mess up in the future, and that way I don't have to go in and mess with that right now. But it should be fixed by next video. So now that we have that, we just answer the question. Of course, we can get rid of this question mark, and this should be negative 1/2. And that is answer to A. And again, just look for your corresponding values. Let's talk about part B now. Part B is asking us to look at sine of 150 degrees. So this is simple as well. Go to your unit circle or have it memorized, and we're looking for sine. Remember, sine is equal to all y values. So go to sine for 150 degrees, which happens to be on our unit circle. Right here. Again, mess that up. Make sure you memorize your unit circle. This shows the importance of knowing your unit circle. But anyways, our y value is going to be 1/2. So we're looking for the coordinate it responds to, right? So this is y, that's x. So now let's go to part C, which is going to be cosecant of negative 270 degrees equals what? So it's important to know a couple things here. So we know cosecant is equal to 1 over sine. So we're looking for a sine value, and we'll put 1 over that. Now, let's talk about negative 270. So we'll make a little note here. When we see a negative theta, we will work clockwise and see what the corresponding angle is for your value. And I'll explain this more too by showing you. Starting at quadrant 4. So starting at quadrant 4, right? So we have a negative value here. So let's go to our unit circle. So starting at quadrant 4, we're working backwards for our angles. So this would be still 0, but we're working backwards this way. So 270 will sit here. And ironically, you can tell by looking at the opposite of your circle, but this would be negative. This would be corresponding to 90 degrees. Talking about negative 270, right? So if this was quadrant 1 now, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4, we would count by degrees, right? So we would have 60, 45, 30, right? 90 degrees. So we know negative 270 would be corresponding to positive 90 on the other side. So keep that in mind, right? So we know that we're going to have cosecant is equal to 1 over 90 degrees. We should say sine of 90 degrees. And what's sine of 90 degrees? we have to take it a step further. We'll go back to our unit circle. Sine of 90 degrees is 1, because sine is y value. So we can move that over here as our notes. So this should be 1 over 1, which is just 1. So again, let's do a brief run through of that problem again. We see CSC, which is cosecant, and we know that that's equal to our cosecant sign. I forget which one it is, but we know that it must correspond to 1 over sine, right? But seeing 270, how negative 270 or any negative value, we go to our unit circle and we work backwards from clockwise, right? So all our angles flop, right? So this becomes 0 becomes 360 and 360 becomes 0. And then we move to 60, or excuse me, 30, 45, 60, then 90, right? And so forth. So now that we're at 90, on the negative side, we see what angle that actually corresponds to on the other side. So it would count all the way through, right? So we should have 30, 45, 60, 90, 120, 135, 150, 180 would stay the same, ironically. That's the halfway point. Then we'll go 210, 225, 245, 270. So negative 270 will correspond with 90. So that's where we get that 90 value from. Again, let's run through the counting. We go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Going clockwise, acting like our values start over here. And we should get 90 as our value. So we plug that into our equation as sine of 90 degrees. We know that sine of 90 degrees is going to be 1 because we look at our 1 value. And we plug that into our equation. 1 over 1 is just 1. So pretty nice stuff right there. We will shrink this for the time being. We'll keep it red to match the theme. Let's look at D. D is going to be tangent of negative 13 pi over 6 is equal to what? So right away, when we see tangent is equal to negative 13 pi over 6, we're applying the same logic, right? So if we go to counting left over right, and we look at our radians this time, we can actually figure out that 13 pi is a little too big for what we need it to be. So what we do in these situations is we will take 12 pi over 6, which is our biggest value, and subtract it from 13 pi over 6. So if we take 12 pi over 6 and we minus 13 pi over 6, we actually get negative pi over 6. And then we plug that in to this equation. So we go tangent of negative pi over 6. And we find where that value is, right? So like I said, if we're working backwards, negative pi over 6 going this way would be right here, right? So looking at our values right here, we can use that data. So negative pi over 6 follows the same logic as I said previously of how we do negative clockwise. So this would be negative 30. This would be negative pi over 6 going clockwise, starting from quadrant 4. So we can use those two values, and we know tangent is equal to sine over cosine. So we do that exact thing. So looking at this, we have negative 1/2 over root 3 over 2. Absolutely beautiful. And we can copy dot flip this. Let's scoot this over to have us a little more room. To negative 1/2 times 2 over root 3. And we should get negative 1 over root 3, and we cannot have that, so we need to rationalize the bottom. So we should have negative 3 over root 3. And remember, to rationalize, we just multiply by root 3. It gets rid of that root, and we multiply it by the top. So then that is going to be our answer. Beautiful. So I'll walk you through it again one more time, verbally, and show a little bit more notes upon it. But for part D, we're following the same logic of working backwards. But we know negative 13 pi over 6 is going to be too big to actually work with. So we subtract it from the biggest thing that we have, which is going to be, in that quadrant, is going to be 12 pi over 6 minus 13 pi over 6, and we should get negative pi over 6. Using that information, we can look at our unit circle and work backwards. When I say backwards, this way, starting in quadrant 1. This is quadrant 4, but we're calling it quadrant 1 for the time being, and seeing where that angle corresponds. So if this was quadrant 1, our first radiant value would be pi over 6. So it's negative pi over 6. Then we look at our values according to this spawn, or this spot. We have pi, or excuse me, root 3 over 2 and negative 1/2. So we know that tangent is 1, or a sine over cosine. So we plug in negative 1/2, because that's our y value, and our root 3 over 2, that's our x value, and we'll work our way to get our values of negative root 3 over 3. That has been evaluating these 4 parts to part 3, and thank you so much for your time.